Cool. Welcome, Plan Stage Weekly, December 15th. Oh, I have the first comment. All right, it's not really a design team preview, but I just saw that we relaxed the requirement a little bit around using reviewer roulette for UX reviews. I think they still want us to prefer, or they still prefer that we use the roulette. But if we have a reason, whether that be for urgency in getting an MR out or whatever the reason is, we can use or we can ask our domain, our UX reviewers within our respective groups to do the review, and they can go ahead and approve it. You just have to add a comment saying that this is the reason why you didn't use the roulette. But yeah, just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention in case you were like me and didn't see that until today. Okay, any questions on any of that? Cool. Demos. Let's start with the OKR management demos. Kushal, you want to?
Yep. Yeah, so let me share my screen and I'll demo. Okay, so what I'm demoing today is basically the tree view with all the additional attributes that weren't visible before. So as you can see, I have the tree view with key results and objectives with all the other metadata options like the milestone, assignees, and labels visible. So let's go ahead and try to create a new objective from scratch and then add a bunch of attributes, and then we'll see whether tree view shows it correctly or not. If I click on new objective and say objective 2, and I click on create, so it gets added. The form remains open because in case user wants to create multiple objectives in one go, they can do that. Now, since this objective doesn't have any attributes, so it doesn't show anything and everything is aligned in the middle. But if I open this objective separately and assign a couple of attributes, like say I want to assign multiple assignees and then want to also set a bunch of labels. We can also do scope labels. So I add the label and then I also add a milestone. So once I do that, since the tree view is not real time, which means that we need to reload the tree to reflect these changes. But now, as you can see, that all the attributes that I added are now visible here. The behavior of all these different attributes is similar to how we are doing it in other places. So if you look at child epics and issues within epic page, then hovering over milestone will show all the details, like what the milestone title is and what is the time frame of it, whether it is past due or not. So for example, this milestone is past due, so it shows that it was expired a month ago. So all those information is visible as it is. We are using the same component to do that. For assignees, in case there are more than 2 assignees, then we use GL avatar inline component, which supports collapsing additional assignees and combines the names within this badge. Yeah, attributes are visible even on all the children items. So you can go ahead and add attributes to these values. So yeah, that is about it. And yeah, one more thing, like in the test project that we have on gitlab.com, it doesn't show ability to create or add key results, but we already have an MR open. I've linked it to our agenda. It is this one. So this merge request, once merged, user will be able to see these two options in the add dropdown in gitlab.com. And as far as the attributes MR is concerned, so this MR is also ready. It is this one. So I've added all the tests and everything. It is now just a matter of adding the UX review, getting that approval, and then we'll send it for final reviews. So this basically covers around 70% of what we wanted to do with the tree. What remains now are 2 things. Basically progress information. So we are waiting for SCG groups MR, which is basically adding the progress widget within the objectives. So once those 2 MRs get merged, we'll be able to consume that information within the tree view. Similarly, although for the MVC, we didn't plan to include health status, but the health status widget is very close to completion, which means that we may be able to accommodate health status within the tree. So next week's plan weekly which will happen in US EMEA time. I'll demo those two attributes, provided that those two attributes are already merged and are available to consume in the tree view. So yep. Any questions so far?
I have some, but they're not strictly related to this.
Yep, sure.
Random design things. Are the assignee icons there? They're pretty big compared to label or milestone.
Yeah.
Can or should they be smaller, or we want them to be this big?
Yeah, so this is the smallest size that GL Avatar inline component supports, which is 24 pixels. So we need to add support for even smaller size, maybe 16 pixels
16.
in case it supports it. But this is also first time where we are using a tree-like widget along with assignees.
With assignees in it.
Yeah, so this is
so.
the first instance where we are using this. So maybe we can target it maybe as a part of refinements once the core functionality is complete. So yeah, I agree. And even this component itself is not quite accurately laid out. Like for instance, if you inspect this particular container, notice what is happening here. Like if I expand and highlight this one, so since we are using absolute positioning with custom left and right attributes, the container element for all the three items is basically smaller than the width of the items
overlapping of the three.
Yeah. So what this problem leads to is we need to offset this additional clipping by providing more margin to the labels container. So if you look at the labels container, which is adjacent, I had to basically offset additional margin due to that. Otherwise, it would basically go underneath the assignees. And I've also raised it in GitLab UI channel. And apparently, it's a known issue. So hopefully, this will get fixed. So yeah, there are a couple of issues with this component. But since this was the fastest way to have this sort of layout, I think we can live with it as far as MVC is concerned. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
My other question was in the add dropdown. This is I have it for issues as well, but I wonder about the separate, new and existing buttons versus just opening do we have an issue for that? Like just having a single field that has autocomplete or something?
Yeah, so we don't, so we do support auto completion. Like if you go to existing and the moment you click it, it will show all the objectives. Similarly, if you go to existing key results, it will show all the existing key results which are available to set. The thing is that as far as combined options within the dropdown is concerned, that's a different conversation because this has been a case with child issues and epics as well. And there too also we have the similar dropdown. So maybe we can tackle both of them as a part of UX discussion and see what we can do there. I think the motivation behind having a single button was to not pollute the header a lot, especially in smaller screens. Like the moment you shrink it past a certain size, you can imagine like if this title is shown in a different locale, then chances are that it will overlap and maybe wrap around. So you want to basically avoid the number of controls that we show within the header, which was the motivation. But yeah, now it's
the single button's good. The single button's okay. I just mean we don't need new and existing. We could just use existing. And if you type something else, then it creates
okay.
We could make that. We only need the one. Yeah.
Okay.
That one.
Yeah, we had to implement this dropdown from scratch, although the component is smaller one. But yeah, we can certainly reuse the issues button. I think the problem with not having a shared dropdown component is because if you look at child issues and epics widget, which is also a tree view, it is all dependent on REST API and it doesn't account for work item types. So right now, if you open this dropdown and select one of these items, we are passing the exact work item type depending on what backend provided with. On the other hand, the drop-down button in the tree widget uses string enums to pass the relevant type and shows the form accordingly. But yeah, once both of them are work item, we might as well reuse the whole tree. And I think that's the motivation why we created the tree view from scratch. We want to reuse this whole tree as it is for epics as well, once all the epics are also work items.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah. So then Can you show me what the query for getting the children here in the tree view looks like?
Sure. So I have just a second. Let me fix something quickly. Yeah. So if you go to this work items app within the core part of our application, all the queries that we use here is available within this app. So if you go to GraphQL folder, I'll also share the link to this file. So when the page is loaded, we are basically loading this work item fragment, which is part of the base page. But for the children, we have work item widgets fragment, which is responsible for fetching all the widgets for the all the children. So right now, since children's also show additional metadata, we are adding those widgets within the children connection. So we have hierarchy, milestone, assignees, and labels, because hierarchy widget represents whether this particular child is expandable or not. And once it is expanded, we use a different query, which is work item tree query, which is similar. It again uses this widgets fragment with the connection. So there's a lot of duplication going on in terms of these fragments. Like I would rather have a single place where I can just define what metadata I want to show for this entire page, especially for the tree part, and it should be available in all the children items as well. But as you can see, I had to define milestone, assignees, and labels 4 times, which was on the children items, on the base item itself, as well as on the actual widgets fragment, which is here. So we would want to reduce this duplication a bit. We can create a widgets fragment and then reuse it everywhere else, because right now the entire query splitting that is happening for the work items is very complicated to wrap our hands around. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering if we were using widgets. And yeah, definitely looks like we are, which I think is good.
Yeah.
Because when we do reuse this for things like issues, sub issues, or epics issues, or
Yeah.
for anything that's that has hierarchy, I'd imagine we are not going to want to show, or at least we'll want to give users the option to not show everything that we're showing here. Because like once we have what?
Yeah. So
It's gonna
yeah, exactly. I understand, because if you look at our epics tree view, there we do have a toggle to hide labels when we don't want to see them.
yeah, exactly.
And we would want to replicate that behavior here as well, like just ability to turn on and off. The thing is that this config is preserved on a user preference, which is not the case in this one. Like I was planning to maybe use a local storage to at least give some option to hide the metadata, or maybe at least hide the labels, because the motivation of adding labels as a part of OKR's MVC was to replicate health status in some way. And it was literally mentioned in the original requirements that we want to use labels as a replacement for health status for now, while we wait for health status availability. But since we are closer to having health status widget, like the backend MR already got merged, and Nicholas has front end MR already open, we are now aiming for health status to be part of MVC, which means that labels will mostly be used to identify which category an OKR belongs to, or an objective or a key result belongs to. So yeah, it would certainly be useful to hide labels when they are not needed. So I can basically add a toggle which is purely front end. It would use local storage and will hide labels for users who want to opt in, but it won't be preserved as a part of user preference. And I think that's okay even for MVC. So yeah.
Would it hide them or not fetch them?
It would hide them, but optional, since it is part of local storage, I think technically we can prevent fetching as well. It would require looking at how we can selectively load fragments, because right now it is all defined in the query. So we'll have to figure out a way to not define this fragment when the local storage flag is not enabled. So yeah.
Do we the toggling of the entire widget, the tree view? Yeah, that one. Is that saved in? Is that persisted at all? Or
Let's check. Nope.
No, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, so this is also something that we want to tackle before GA, and I think in Epics we don't even have that. We have an open issue for front end, which is easier for someone new in the team to implement that toggle. But what we can do is we can basically make use of this toggle by not fetching the children when the widget is collapsed to save some bandwidth there. So
yeah, definitely. And then so I wonder, I'm working on click, opening it up in the modal instead of the full detail view.
okay.
But when we do that, because the children, I think, are kind of deep in the deep in Apollo cache, because ideally we'd be able to render the modal with all the data we've already queried within this tree view.
Yeah.
But I can't think of a way to easily do that.
Yeah, and I looked at the implementation of how model worked, and I discussed it with Natalia as well. And yeah, I mean, it is not as straightforward as we would like. So that's the reason why I fixed the breadcrumbs part first, because we don't want to prevent user from navigating and drilling down individual items. So you can basically click on any child from the tree view, and it will take you to that page. So user is not blocked. Like there is still a workaround. It is just that user would have to wait for the page reload to happen. And for instance, if user is on multiple levels deep child, then there is no way to go to the top level objective from this view. So I don't know whether breadcrumbs supports having multiple parents all the way up to the root parent within the breadcrumbs. So yeah, but right now navigation is still possible. It is just that we would have to click multiple times to reach the parent objective.
You can pass it an array.
Array of parents, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but then in that case, if I have navigated to this objective, then based on my understanding of how the query works, I don't know whether it would be possible to have information of all the parents up to the root level. If I am loading this. We only support immediate parent, but then we basically end up in a recursive situation where how deep do we go to fetch the parent information? Technically, it is possible. Like when I open any work item and look at what information is available, there is a value present which mentions like which particular parent this work item belongs to. In this case, since it doesn't have any hierarchy, we are not fetching that information. But for instance, if I go back to the parent item and look at this work item, then just a second. Okay. I think we are using browser backward forward button, so it is not showing.
I'm looking at the payload.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah. So if I look at this one in the widgets within the hierarchy, I think there is an option to have information about the parent, like which parent this particular widget belongs to. So there is a way to fetch it, but yeah, like collecting information of
it was on the hierarchy at the top level. There's parent that's null for that one.
Work item type widgets.
Yeah, and widgets, and then
yeah, there was children. A parent null I just saw. Can you scroll a little bit? Scroll down. Yeah. No, children know a little further down. Yeah.
Other way. Scroll up.
Okay.
Parent as below the node. See,
parent. Oh, here it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we could just do the same thing we're doing with children, but as ancestors instead.
Yep.
Yeah.
But then just something in mind, when I click on any objective, I already have the tree.
Yeah.
I don't know where to save that while clicking it. At least if I, like, for example, I click on the fourth item in the tree. I know the objective 1, 2, 3. I just had to calculate here, and when I click on the link, maybe I can save it somewhere in the URL or something. I mean, that's too much for the URL, I know.
Yeah, I mean, if we were using view router to navigate between the children, it would have still been possible. Like we can inject their information as a part of router object and consume it there, so that we wouldn't have to worry about like which particular objective hierarchy this objective belongs to. But yeah, since we are not using router, we are making the navigation here, it won't be possible to preserve that information.
Yeah, I don't know of any other way in Vue, like in our architecture. Like we can, there are a lot of hacks, but let's not go there. Yeah.
Yeah, because I also think eventually we want to get to a place where work items can have multiple parents.
Yeah, that was already proposed for epics.
Yeah.
Right now, if you switch parent to any work item, it will basically switch it silently without informing user. So for instance, if you look at this subchild key result 1, which belongs to objective 1, it is an indirect child of sample objective. It is not a direct child, but I can technically go ahead and click on existing, select this one and add it. And at that point, see that it basically got, yeah. So at this point, you can see that both of them are visible because tree is not real time. So if I reload the page and then expand objective 1, this basically is part of direct children of sample objective and is not present anywhere in the middle of the tree. So right now you can switch parents without any user confirmation. And that was reported like, I mean, when I was having it UX reviewed, when we had the first MR for tree view open, like there was feedback on you basically where user was able to set an item to a different parent without any information on what exactly happened, like whether the parent was switched or whether the item got assigned to multiple parents.
Sorry, how do we change parent or child today?
You can change the parent by visiting that parent first. So for example, right now this key result is part of sample objective, but now I want to move it to objective 1. Then I would need to visit objective 1's work item page, click on existing key result. And here it is. And I can click on add and it will show up here, but obviously this tree will not be updated right away. So we'll need to refresh it and here it is.
Okay. So we don't have subscription for the
tree view, not yet.
Tree view. Okay.
Yeah, in fact, we are fetching all the children along with the base page information when the page is loaded for the first time. Ideally, I would want to separate both the queries so the page gets loaded first and then direct children's are loaded. But if you see, when I reload this page for the first time, everything is shown up at once. I don't think we are batching 2 queries at once. We are only making 1 query, which is this query work item. And we are just passing the information of this particular work item. But since it is part of the same query, I can open and inspect the hierarchy for this particular sample objective query. And within children, I have all the direct children, which are part of the tree. So ideally, I would want to separate both the queries so that page gets loaded first, and then there is another query which is fetching just the children. But that's again not strictly for MVC, but I would do it most probably in first week of January once we have the core functionality available. Yeah, and then maybe it will be easier to have a subscription. Like we do support subscriptions on other attributes. So I don't know whether it is possible to have subscription on hierarchy widget itself, because then it will be possible to get this tree updated. It is just that if we are doing the subscription route, then the way it will work is a bit tricky to understand, because at this point, suppose I have all the children's expanded all the way. And if I'm updating something with the base tree, it will refetch the base tree, but it will not know whether there are any children which are expanded or not. So what may happen is the moment tree gets refetched automatically based on subscription, these items may again collapse without user realizing it, that they got auto collapsed. And since we have 9 levels of depth, we need to be mindful about when we collapse it.
Yeah.
So at this point, I think it is easier to have a rather dumb implementation where we don't refetch and maybe show a warning or an information within the widget saying that you switched parents to one of the children. So do you want to refetch? And maybe we can make that operation async, like providing a refresh action here, and it will just call a refetch action on the Apollo query rather than reloading the whole page.
Yeah. I almost wonder if we should have for each of these child items, like within the hierarchy widget, we only return work item IDs. Like we can only query work item IDs, and then we have a separate like root level query for every work item. And then that, because they all batch together anyway.
Yeah.
But then
if you look at we are fetching a lot of information at once at this point, and let me check like what was the size. Like we have basically downloaded 18 kbs of information, and that too in a rather simple tree where we have several more items available. Like if you expand and look at the response preview, like there's a lot of information that we are including within this payload that we don't need to, at least on the page row. So I think first way to fix it is basically at least splitting the base page query and the hierarchy query.
Well, so you click down into hierarchy and then one of the work items. Yeah.
Yeah. So
like
if you look at
almost as much stuff within each of these as we are on the root page.
Yeah. Except that we are not fetching the indirect children. So if you look at this tree, we have information up to objective 1, but we don't have information of these 3 values. These are fetched only when the objective is expanded. So if I close it, and we have around 8 items in this tree. So if I reload the page and look at the response, then the children within the hierarchy will only have 8 items at the most. Here it is. So we have 8 items in total. But when we expand a child, it makes another query and then it fetches the information of other children. And we are caching the response once an item is expanded. So that is already sorted. It is just that we shouldn't be combining the base objective information and the hierarchy objective information in one query.
Okay. And then how does it...
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I'm hogging all the questions.
No, what is the other query for in the network tab? I saw one. Are there 2 queries being...
Yeah, so one is for current user, and I think it may be for something else that I'm not aware of, because we are not doing
click on the third. No, click on the third and the 3.
Yeah. So the third one was basically made for when I expanded objective 1.
Yeah, and the fourth one is...
And fourth one is...
I think work item is being fetched again.
Yeah, so this is for prefetching. So we have prefetching mechanism in place. Like if you hover over any item, notice how just on hover it got expanded. So this is actually a side effect of the tasks list, where we supported prefetching when the model is opened. Like if you go to any issue where there are tasks, we can technically prefetch all the task list items upon hover. So model dialog opening is faster. Wait, let me find an issue which has a task present. Yeah. So we have this issue where the task is present. If I clear this list and if I just hover, notice how request happened right on hover. So when I click on this, model opens instantly instead of user waiting for the data to be loaded within the model. So there's a way to turn it off. Like my MR is still in draft, but I will not combine turning off prefetching for objectives at least. But yeah, that additional query is just for prefetching.
So you clicked on it and hover is already happening. So we have 2 queries at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that is. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering. Where's the another query? Okay. Okay.
On the how are we handling Apollo Cache when you're loading the children? Are we just injecting it to the hierarchy
So we are using a component recursively here, like the component which is responsible for rendering the top level children is also responsible for rendering subtree. And it is basically part of the same Apollo cache. So when I load the subtree, it knows that objective one, which belonged to the top level objective, got further hierarchy children, which are now available at a subtree level. So we are using the same Apollo object across all the subtrees. So if you remove, it basically ensures that the removal happens instantly. There you go. So since there is no information available, there is another interesting caveat where no children is available, but when I click on expand, nothing happens, but the query continues to happen. So yeah, there are still a few minor glitches that we'll need to fix once we have the core functionality ready. And write query for some reason wasn't working correctly. So I have an issue open, which was basically around implementing cache eviction in some way. So if I go to the issues, we have an issue that I created. So just a second. Yeah, so here it is. So this issue is basically for cache eviction. So right now removal is a bit buggy, and I worked with Natalia in sorting it out. And the only way to do it correctly was to basically do a refetch when a subtree child is removed. So for example, if I remove one of the children which belongs to the top level objective and we are on the root page, so removal happens predictably where we show a toast with undo action, and when I click on undo, the child is added back. But this behavior is not available when I do it for a child which is indirect. So if I remove this object from here, it gets removed, but there is no toast and there is no way to undo that action. And as a side effect, if the child was the only child for the subtree, then the button will remain here. So that is because we are not clearing the cache correctly when this happens, and it is not as straightforward. So we have created a follow-up issue which will be not part of MVC because it is not as simple to do right away. This one, I'll paste a link to this one here in our agenda.
Cool. Yeah, we made a lot of progress. I know it was a pretty big MR.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's exciting to get that through and to see.
Yeah, and thanks to Natalia for helping on the main front end MR, which implemented the tree multiple. It was the implementation was quite complicated, to be honest, and there was no way to split that MR. So Natalia helped multiple times throughout the past couple of weeks while we were getting that MR for review and merge, and then Kong reviewed it and made some good suggestions. So shout out to both of them. Yeah. Next is
sorry, real quick. You noted, or you said that key results is being added back to it.
Yeah. So key result related backend is already merged. It is just that we had turned off ability to create key result or add key result because backend was not ready back then. So I've opened another front-end MR and it is currently waiting for UX approval. I'm working with UX designer there to sort it out, and hopefully it will get merged by end of day today. I'm aiming for this MR to get reviewed and merged by end of this week, so that starting next week on test projects within GitLab.com, we will have most of the information available to try it out. And next week's goal, like I mentioned, is having a progress widget and health status.
Sweet. And then it was added to the enum, so we'll see KRs in the issue list also, or once that gets
key results will be showing up within issues list, but I don't think we have ability to filter issues list with key result as one of the supported types. It only has objective. So we will need to implement a new token value for type within the issues list so that key results start showing up there. But yeah, it's a minor follow-up and will be purely front end, just a matter of adding the correct value.
Cool. All right. Any other questions on hierarchy? All right. Simon, you filled out number 2, right?
Yep, I sure did. I have a far less comprehensive demo. Let's do it. We've got, are these different colors, by the way? Am I going crazy? This
Different
none
shades,
and add
that's
to
it.
iteration.
Yes, both are
Slightly
different.
different.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. So I've not added the avatar. This is just where I'm up to. I've got this little add a comment button, and then you get the little text area. We've got both the different text field formats, and then yeah, we're gonna add some text here. Let's make it strong text. We save this, but this is just for adding comments. So to actually view them, and this next part is really going to amaze you. Got a query here for only comments, and we hopefully have one here that says yeah in bold. There we go. Look at that. There's a comment that we just added to that work item.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, are those okay? The other ones are actually only comments, but comments you made.
These other ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. This was testing earlier in the day. This is the one though. I didn't know how to fetch just a single one.
Is that possible?
Anyway, it is by node ID. If we have this, but it's not possible. If you just do like, there's a filter on notes, but that's just pages, I believe. Oh, I lost n elements from this. It should just be one then. Is this? Oh, it does work. No, it does. What is it? What is happening there?
No, that one's test.
Oh, it returns separate sets of nodes. Okay. You can't do that there. Interesting. This isn't part
Oh,
of the
does it
demo.
have to be discussions last one, maybe?
Can you try the last? Yeah, because I know the first one, the first filter also exists in that. No, it's
Last
only
is not.
first is there. Okay.
Alas.
Yeah,
First is. There we go. Okay, thank you. That's probably more useful.
First.
It also supports sorting chronologically, right?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, there was some extra fields in there that I deleted. I just copied this from to be this query for getting comments.
Wait, it supports sorting by what?
By when the comment was left, like, do we want to see most recent comment on the top or the?
I thought it does not sort by that.
It is not available in the backend for now.
Okay.
No, just filter off and first off.
Okay.
We're going to talk about that in the next demo.
Nice. So regarding system notes, is it already merged and available to try it out?
Now.
Why are you jumping ahead, Kushal? That's number 3. That's what I meant. Activity system notes are now called activity.
Okay. Because I have an issue open to ensure that that hierarchy needs to be above system notes.
So that I already fixed in the MR, which just got merged. So
okay, so you already fixed it?
Yeah,
I
did.
Okay, nice. So I'll send you that issue to verify and close.
Okay. Yeah, so I remember seeing the last video in the demo and I fixed it in the MR. Yeah, I remember seeing the notes in the agenda and I was like, let me just fix it. So I've done.
Nice.
Yeah. So notes are below the hierarchy now. And it's merged while we were talking. So it's the Donald, it was the same issue. The MR title was more than 72. So wasn't merged, but the danger review was failing. And when Kasia fixed that title and the danger job ran again, yeah, it merged.
I thought our danger rule was just on commit notes, can't be longer than.
No, it is in the title as well. I've faced it before, and I don't
think
remember.
it's title if you're squashing, because then it uses the title.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think I had to squash all the comments yesterday when I was doing the maintainer comments, but I didn't because I wanted to get it merged and Natalia was online. And then she did her best to click the button, and yeah, it's merged anyhow now. So
Sweet.
So I just pasted the link to that issue. So in case your MR gets deployed, and if you can try it out on GitLab.com, I don't think, but yeah.
It is not available on GitLab. It's MEC2, so I'll have to test it in plan stage.
Okay.
Yeah, it's behind MEC2 right now.
Yeah, right now. So there was, but yeah, we can finish the demos first, and we can then discuss.
Yeah, sure.
Feature flags.
Yeah.
All right, nicely done, Simon. In like you got that up quickly, but that's exciting to see that, to see the ability to add comments to it already.
Yeah. Okay. So my demo. So the first MR included just fetching and showing the list and making sure that the work item notes query is fetched separately and not as a part of the main query. So like right now, if you see, which I showed in the last one, so there are 2-3 use cases which I'll show. One which has the next space, one which does not have the next page, and with sorting. So what I'm going to show is sorting and pagination together. So here, if you see that we have very little pagination, the notes are there, it's visible. The component is new, which is copied now. In the last demo, I said we're using the same alert management component, but we are not, because we were facing some use cases which were not handled in that. And we ended up creating a new one, which is copied from the system note from issues without the Vuex dependency. And in the future, we plan to use the same component for issues as well. Okay, so by default, if you see, the sorting is oldest first. And since this is the only first page, there's no no-brainer. We have the work item notes query where the page size is 30. I have used the same page size which is used for issues, which increases incrementally, which is the batch discussion, which is the logic the same as it is in issues, which I'll show in the next task. And if I just change the sorting is in front end. We have all the list, we're just reversing it. And another thing is the sorting direction is saved in the local storage. So if I refresh this again, the sorting direction will be saved and it is new year's first. So this is one thing which is there as a part of local storage thing in the activity filter. What we are going to do in this MR is going to keep the filters and the sorting separately. Like it is not in the issues, we had the sorting and the filter in the same thing. Now let's come to a task with, let me just show it with oldest first, and then a task with lot more queries, activities than like we have different pages. Okay, so if you see here, you see the button was disabled till the time I'm fetching all the system nodes here. Yeah. So it is fetched in batches, but I'm fetching in paths. If you see, the first one is with page size 30, and then it is with page size, it's the current user one, sorry. And then if it's with 45, it's 1.5. It's the same logic. So it's 30, 1.5 the previous per page, and the maximum limit is 100. So that's how it is. I can do 30, 30, 30, 100, 100, 100, which is a small change. I just wanted to make sure that I have no idea why this logic is present on issues, but I've tried to keep it the same, the logic which is on issues, but we can change it anyhow. it's not a big thing. Yeah. What I've done here is on the first load only, there's it is it is an intersection observer which is placed at the top, and it keeps on calling appear till the time we have loaded all them. I wanted to which I can show, what we wanted to achieve here is load on demand, like at the end. But the problem with that is, since the sorting is on the front end, I have to make sure that I have, like, I anyways have to fetch all of them at the same time when I'm sorting. And on loading, if it's the reverse, if it's newest first, then I don't have any of the pages, and then I have to fetch all of them. So that's one thing. What we can do is, we can, load more on oldest first, load on demand on oldest first, and not on newest first, which is, I'm not sure. I'll give it for UX review and maybe what Nick suggests. But what I thought the best is, make sure that the same, we are fetching it in batches for all. And for example, if it's newest first, you can see the loader till the time I'm like fetched all. And like, let's see. I don't know what happened. What just happened? Yeah. And then it just fetches all, and at one time fetch all in reverse. So yeah, that's pagination and sorting. There is one point that we're not sorting, so regularly people don't sort a lot, so we may want to choose to load scroll on demand. What I can do to show it to you is, let me just, how it works in oldest first. This, and I will have to change to oldest one. And then and you'll see that it just works like it should, but because the sorting is on the front end, I has to fetch all of them like on demand. When I lead to the end of the page, it's scrolling. So that is one thing, but it works well with, like, when you don't have to sort and it's not newest first. Yes. So that's the thing. I was facing Apollo queries where the work item notes and the work item notes query and the work item query were conflicting, and every time the update was called, it was fetching the work item notes every time. And that's why in the demo last time, it is not real time, and still we were able to see the latest updates, was because it was fetching the work item notes again, which should not have happened. That's why that was a bug. And subscriptions will come later on in the separate MR. With there are several use cases which we need to handle here is toggle commit list, see description diffs, and one or two that Simon mentioned is we can also combine, for example, if I change the description together, a couple of events, that things that are, have the same activity, we can combine them. For example, if this is December 31 only, then we can combine that. So that I think I'll combine with the subscription MR. So this MR I'll give for UX review today, and hopefully it will be merged before I go for vacation. Yeah, so that's about it.
Cool. And we just had our one-on-one, so I asked a lot of questions there. But Kushal, you got or you want to?
Yeah, so like lately I've been noticing that every time I assign any OKRs related MR to a UX designer who isn't part of plan state, then chances are that they don't exactly have information on which feature flags they need to have enabled. And although I try to keep as much information within the merge request description, like these are the feature flags you need to have enabled on your project to be able to see the information, but still it is hard for them to reproduce. And again, I wouldn't blame them, because I think the entire feature flag situation we have around work items and OKRs in general is fairly complicated. Like even I struggled initially when I was working on smaller issues around OKRs, where I wouldn't know, like, okay, I need to enable this particular feature flag for this feature and this flag for this feature. So is there a way to basically streamline it in some way if we can get rid of any additional feature flags that we don't want? Like particularly if you look at just these MVC feature flags that we have around work items, these are fairly hard to keep track of. Even for the OKRs, we have two feature flags, which is different from work item feature flags. Like right now, you need to enable one feature flag called database restrictions and another one called OKRs MVC. Only after these two feature flags are enabled, you will be able to see anything around OKRs. But then chances are that if someone visits the work item page, then some things may still not show up for them because they don't have relevant work items MVC feature flag enabled. So I feel that if there is a way from backend where we just toggle a simple switch and it turns on everything for someone who wants to try out any feature around OKRs or work items in general.
So I have a question. I don't know. So what I was trying to do yesterday to check that the hierarchy and notes are, I could not actually see objective. And I myself was wondering what feature flag am I missing? And then I figured out that why isn't that behind the MVC2 flag? I mean, because like is OKR stuff, we decided to keep the OKR as a separate thing.
So yeah, so if you look at OKRs, it is basically for internal team use once the MVC is available. And everything that we are building for OKRs is like some of the implementations that we are doing is very specific to OKRs. It is not around generic work items in terms of features. So although we may be adding new widget types which are on top of work items, but they are not strictly for OKRs. And every time we are working on any feature which is relevant just for work items, but although it is getting used for OKRs, we are not using OKRs feature flag. But the hierarchy widget that you see within the work items page, that depends on having OKRs related feature flag in place, which means that if you want to create objective on a project level, you need to ensure that a certain feature flag is enabled, which is OKRs underscore MVC. Then there is backend feature flag called database restrictions, which is very specific to OKRs. Like we want to make sure that user is able to create key results only inside objectives. Key results will not be allowed to be created within a project at a root level. Similarly, you cannot create more than 100 children for any objective. So that is another restriction. And one more restriction is the depth. Like you cannot go more than 9 levels deep when you are creating objectives within objectives and so on. So these restrictions are again very specific to OKRs, which means that we need to use a separate feature flag. So we are trying to keep everything that is very specific to OKRs and doesn't impact work items in general behind separate feature flags. But there is still an overlap present, like system notes, for example, which is going to be part of OKRs widget and MVC. But system notes is still very generic work items feature, which means user will not only have to take care of OKRs related feature flag, but they will also need to enable feature flags around work items to be able to see everything together. So that's the confusing part that I think we need to address in general for both reviewers and users who want to try it out locally.
Yeah, for me as well. I couldn't really, honestly, I went to the new path and I was like, okay, this is an objective. And now I see it's an issue. I'm like, I created an objective yesterday, it's an issue. So yeah, I myself don't know. Is this documented somewhere? I don't know. I missed that maybe when it was.
Yeah. So before, so the due date for MVC is January 18th, and we plan to update the documentation in terms of which features are, because since it is an internal use only, we are not updating our documentation. Otherwise, it will start showing up for customers and users as well, which we don't want. But what we can do is we can make it a part of similar to architectural blueprint, just that it won't strictly be a blueprint because it's a feature and not a framework or a foundation. So yeah, I think having a centralized documentation just around OKRs where user can know which feature flags to turn on should be possible. But for that purpose only, if you go to GitLab OKRs project, which is on top of our agenda, I have added as much information within the README of that project, and we can do similar to work items as well, where I have added the information like which feature flags we need to enable to be able to see it. it is selected here. So we can do that similar to in plant test project as well. We can basically add a README to that project and provide the information like which feature flag you need to enable to see what. So at least for internal testing and usage purposes, someone can just look at the README and know, okay, they need to enable these feature flags.
Yeah, so that's listed out in the work items blueprint. I linked on, what is it, 3CI.
Yeah.
So there's two sections there. There's one that talks through what our initial plan was for feature flags, where we were planning on just using more of a promotion style process there, as opposed to having to keep track of like a different feature flag for every widget and turning off and on each of those and then worrying about dependencies and everything. The plan was to just have 3 feature flags for each different phase that the widget or work item is in. So one feature flag turns it on for or one feature flag is turned on for just the plan stage project. The next feature flag is turned on for GitLab org and GitLab.com. And then the last feature flag is turned on for all of GitLab.com. And then the next step would be to get it out of feature flags completely. With OKRs, like you said, it's a little bit of a one-off. So yeah, the feature flags are a little bit different with OKRs, but maybe we should list it in the blueprint also, or at least link to the wiki or to the README in the OKRs test project that you created.
Yeah.
But there's also a section in the blueprint that lists off all the widgets that have been created and where those are in the feature flag promotion process. So what feature flag they're behind. I think we've been doing a decent job of updating that as widgets go through the process. But yeah, we want to make sure that we keep updating that. I'm trying to think. I think Milestone was the last one that went out of the feature flag process, and that one's definitely updated in the blueprint. But yeah, it definitely is confusing because now we have 5 total feature flags just for work items. Actually, we have 6 because we have one for the tasks within issue page that was an old like legacy feature flag. That's not following that process either. Okay. It's top of the hour. I think everything else can be read only. I like having the APAC meeting at this day and time, but if you all want to change it to a different day, just add a comment to.
No, it works. Please don't change this one. Monday is already.
Well, it would
was
have to
nice.
be. Ideally, it would be Tuesday, the earliest for you all, because I'm not gonna show up if it's my Sunday night. I'll show up Monday night, but not Sunday night. Okay, and then plan team day. If you all want to host or attend, go to that issue that John linked there. All right. Awesome demos, all. Have a good rest of your day and week.
You too. See ya.
Bye. Take care. Bye.